Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's been a while to another edition of the Chichester Chats. It's me. It's Lilith Hellfire, and of course, the man himself, drone operator to the stars, Mr. DG Chichester. Hello, sir.
I should take that up and just find some good celebrity places and spy on them. Hello, guys. Thank you for having me back. Sorry, it's been a wait. I think that's a combination of just both of us syncing up, but good to be back, and hope everyone's been well, and looking forward to this conversation. I don't think I'll have quite as many witty one-liners as there are throughout this run, but we'll see.
That's right, yes, because we're doing more Milestone, yes, because we're going to be talking hardware 45 through 50, which the last time when we did Blood Syndicate, you were just like a guest writer, right? This time you were the new writer of hardware.
Yeah, which was exciting. Unfortunately, the book would end, but we didn't know that, or I didn't know that. I don't think they knew that. Yeah, this was a big deal. I mean, not that it wasn't a big deal to play in the Milestone universe with the couple issues of Blood Syndicate, or there's a limited series called The Long Hot Summer. Mm-hmm. So it crosses over a few of the characters and such, but this was a chance to really dig in and be part of it. And obviously, I mean, all the Milestone books were sort of flagship books, but certainly this one, in some ways, always felt to me a little bit more the Milestone book, even before I was involved in it. So to me, this was a big deal and a lot of fun from what I can remember, which is not as much as I would like, having reread the stories.
So I would assume a job opening came up for a writer of this book, and an editor contacted you and said, "Hey, or
yeah, I mean, yes, that would be the typical way this would happen.
Yes.
There was not a lottery system. I did not break in and write my name on a piece of paper and sort of there was no swapping, there was no con. It was it was a call. I can't remember if it was Joe who called me, Joe Illidge, but I have a feeling it was probably Dwayne, who probably fronted the offer itself. Dwayne McDuffie, who had co-created the Milestone universe, and like hardware in my mind was the seminal Milestone book. Dwayne is the seminal Milestone creator, even though obviously he had phenomenal partners with Dennis Cowan and other folks, Christopher Priest. But Dwayne and I had gone back a ways. I think I've talked about this before. I was in film school at NYU. I was very good friends with Greg Wright. Greg Wright was very good friends with Dwayne. So therefore, I was good friends with Dwayne. How it works that way. And you might say that I am responsible. Now, this is a joke. Let's frame this out, for Milestone, in the sense that if I hadn't gotten Greg his job at Marvel, then Greg probably wouldn't have gotten Dwayne his job at Marvel. And if Dwayne hadn't gotten his job at Marvel, would he have gone on to create Milestone exactly that way? So it's all that, it's a wonderful life type of stuff. Anyway, point being, I had known, Dwayne for a long while, and I kind of feel like he did the outreach and said there's an opening, and I can't remember the specifics, but I sort of feel like that would have been a big thrill, both in terms of the character and Dwayne, who I respected. I knew him, I was friendly with him. We would just go get coffee or dinner, so the relationship was just sort of very ordinary at that level. But even so, I had huge respect for Dwayne, and as a creator, and what he had gone through, some of the prejudices he had to suffer through in getting to where he had gotten. And so for him to kind of say, hey, we want you to play in this universe, would have been a big deal, to me at any point. But certainly then, because I was I wasn't on something regular, so it would have been a important anchor too, as a job.
I mean, you bring your A game to all your projects, but I mean, did you feel extra pressure here to like, oh, I don't want to screw this up. I don't want to screw this up.
Oh yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, that's exactly it. When you respect people and you respect organizations, I can't think of an instance where I ever didn't, bring what I could bring to the table. Some jobs are more, what do you want to say? By the numbers, in a way. You sort of use your toolkit and you're putting yourself into it. If you're not, for some reason, you feel like I am totally doing this with my no offense to left-handed people, my left hand, so I am totally doing this. I'm not doing this then, I'm not putting any real effort into it. Then you should walk away. But Milestone was a real environment. I think we've talked about the Bible before, the Milestone Bible that they had created, which was phenomenal in the depth that it went into and the details that it had, and the sense that this was a real world building, real world. There was Dwayne, who, to my mind, was just this great creative force. You didn't want to let them down. I didn't want to let them down. So I really put myself into it, and rereading it now, I feel like it kind of really crackles and hits all the right notes. In some ways, it's just a big, beefy bunch of 90s adventure stories, but they're pretty good in my mind. Big, beefy 90s adventure stories. There's some whatever fascination I had with freaking supervillain bloody doctors, comes back again. It didn't work out with Surgeon General and Daredevil, but I'll make it work this time.
Autopsy and postmortem.
Yeah, but they're kind of work, actually. I think I finally nailed the system. They feel very David Cronenberg to me. They feel very Jeremy Irons, Dead Ringers for some reason. But I feel like I put a lot into this, and I can. That world building document, and I talked about that before, that Bible, I used it certainly as I did the other Milestone stories, but I could feel here I was really drawing on the world, little details and things I was referencing throughout. Felt like you're able to be part of that complete environment and call certain things to the fore and try to set things up for later, which didn't happen. It feels like it was a really good rush to kind of go through these stories.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the ones where I've come to Milestone recently. I wasn't reading them at the time, and I love these stories, and I was able to jump into this. I didn't feel lost. You explained everything pretty quickly, what's been going on, and I just knowing you, I could just imagine, the Chichester Files getting pulled out, all the current tech on the market. And it's like, what can I do? What can I use? What can I create? Create from?
That's hardware.
Exoskeleton
tech is his thing. So I feel like this is right up your alley, definitely. But I remember reading this, and it's because the issue before this, it's static and a whole big team. It's a whole big crescendo, and so they really kind of just set you up for to move on to the next arc. But I was like, oh man, no more static, because static was a crowd pleaser.
Right, and I do play with him a little bit in that one scene, and he gets referenced. Again, this is again one where I can't pull the the knowledge base if there was of what I was given and what I kind of came up with. But I feel that there were a few things that they knew they were getting to hardware 2.0. They wanted to reboot the armor, make the change. So that feels like that was something we were driving toward. And I think the whole Alva Edwin construct may have been something that they, was part of it. If they didn't suggest it outright, was part of a kind of a group think. I don't think I would have done that totally on my own.
Good old Thomas Edison reference. Gotta love it.
Exactly. But there's there's a lot of the tech thing in there. And I think that maybe that was also part of Dwayne's, I'm going to put it on Dwayne. I could talk to Joe, and Joe could say, "No, I hired you. Dwayne had nothing to do with it," which might have been it too. But I think that I was semi-known for being a little bit ahead of the tech curve, and that being a big interest of mine as well. So I'd like to think that was part of, hey, this guy would be really good on this book. And I could see reading through it that there are lots of references to expanding the hardware technology and how that worked and why it worked, even beyond that, talking about different computer systems and now, of course, incredibly dated America Online CD-ROM. There's some references in there which are just hysterical to me. We're going to access the CD-ROM and we're going to do this, which probably sounded like the future, then. But some of this shit's pretty prescient too. I mean, the whole distributed internet network, file system for the Edwin construct. He distributes himself across multiple nodes. Yeah, yeah. But that's probably what I was reading about, right? Or I was probably doing, a lot of that. Tour, yeah. Music files, torrents, saying, all right, let's apply to this. And probably 50% of the readers were like, what the hell is this shit? But now you sort of read it and it's like it's on the back of a cereal box.
Like,
exactly.
But yeah, I did love that reference. Yeah, kids, they used to mail you internet in the
Okay, Grandma, let's get you back to the nursing home.
They're fun characters.
Come in the mail.
Yeah. I think that's also I do think I was firing on some pretty good cylinders here. So I'll pat myself on the back for that. This is surprisingly, I had no negative Paul on this going into it, as I often do, and I read through it and I'm like, okay, aside from maybe one too many one-liners, I really think this works really well. But I think it's a credit to, and obviously part of my research would have been reading or rereading as much of the surrounding world and the issues to kind of get into this.
Yeah, I was gonna say everybody's kind of that one-liner, especially like Static, Icons. So
that was a fun scene.
That's just the thing. That's the gag of it all.
But there's a big cast of characters, and it feels like it was very easy to navigate them. Hard company. His cover company has a pretty big supporting cast. His girlfriend, his mom and dad. There's so many different characters that are part of his world. And sometimes they're in so many scenes together. But somehow I feel like I navigated it pretty well, and everybody had their moments and their little bits of personality, as opposed to, no, I'm going to just go focus on loner character, and I don't have to worry about
this. Was so refreshing because modern comics, Phil and I talk about this all the time. Side characters gone. If you're in the rogues gallery, your toys don't sell. You're not here. No Shocker. No Scorpion.
Right.
Yeah, it seems like
Dr. Octopus and the Lizard all the time.
A lot of modern comics, it seems like the supporting cast have fallen by the wayside, or it's like, we might get through them.
Even Lois and Jimmy, I'm just saying, it's a trend, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think there's a push from some folks I talk to. It's like get the character in the suit or whatever as quickly as possible, and then focus on that. That's what people are here for. So therefore, there's not that. The supporting cast isn't as interesting to have and I'm saying this with big air quotes, isn't as interesting to have in the scene as, no, let's have Captain X stand in the scene with 4 other costume characters, and then they're all having a dialogue. Okay. But they're probably having a dialogue about going to break in someplace or break some heads or do whatever it is a bunch of costume characters are going to do.
And it seems like too a lot of times now writers don't have time to flesh out the supporting cast, because most a lot of these books they'll reboot them after a year, and then when they reboot you get a new writer. It's like remember back in the 90s, guys like Grunwald and Peter David were getting like 10-year runs, like the big long run. Now you're lucky. Like Al Ewing got 4
issues. It's a big long run.
Like 2 to 4 years is a huge run now.
That's true. And
standard.
I don't know the inside track on all that. Clearly, again, I could call Joe Illidge and maybe he would tell me, but I think also, I don't know, is that some writers and creative teams, they seem to almost come into it. I don't know this for a fact, but they almost seem to kind of come into it. I just want to do a year on this.
Yeah.
Right. They treat it almost like it's a limited run, and therefore that's what they want to do. And that may be a publishing thing too, right? And again, let's reboot it. Yeah. Let's go back to issue 1.
It's changed a lot.
Right. Let's change it that way. But, and I'm not going to, I'll give myself a little bit of credit here. I mean, this was 6 issues, 7 issues.
Yeah, 6.
6. And, I came into this hot on an existing book with a big cast, and I'm juggling all this stuff. So it's certainly possible to do.
Oh, yeah.
Right. There's no reason not to do it. But if you're coming into it and you're going to say, I have my mandate, I have my vision on this, if that's the kind of a creator you are and you're approaching it that way, then your attitude may be, I don't want to deal with all that shit. I want to deal with this. Right. I just want to deal with character X, and I want to do that. And I want to go do my mission and have him fight so-and-so and get out of here. My mandate, again, I can't remember a damn thing, but I can remember that person. I can remember who I am, and I can remember. I would have wanted to play with this world.
Yeah,
right?
I would have, like, sparkly and new and like very inviting and fun. Like, Milestone was the thing.
Right, and I wanted to. I respected these people, not just the characters in the book, but the people I was working with. Joe Illidge and, Matt Wayne and Dwayne and, Dennis, Prentice, and so I feel like I would have wanted to be collaborative in making these stories happen. That doesn't mean sitting around a committee and like, what do I do next? What do I do next? What do I do next? What should happen in the next panel? Right. I know I would have went and run out, the leash on these things and then seen what I could kind of come up with. But when you do that, you want to play with the characters and the world more than reset it, right? And just say, well, I know this is my vision of this. My responsibility, I think, was to build this world, play with this world instead of trying to recreate it, which would have been massive hubris.
I just imagine you sitting there writing a script of just those tech magazines.
You got it to 50.
Yes.
Yeah. And
that was a really big accomplishment. In and of itself, honestly, there was a lot going on for Milestone.
No, yes, definitely,
time, so.
Definitely. I remember taking some, these are the fledgling days of the internet, as you know. So, it didn't really exist as it does now. But I was online anyway. I was on message boards on like AOL and America Online and Genie, and I never. This was another service. Kids and, where there would be conversations on things called message boards instead of the free form, tweet storms or whatever. But I remember taking some shit from some trolls because I had done a couple of books where in a row where it just so happened that I'd been brought in and then the book ended. I've been brought in and then the book ended. So I remember some particular troll, like, saying, oh, Chichester's the title killer. Like they bring him in to end the book or once he comes in, the book ends, which is like, you can imagine was like, oh shit, this is what I need to hear. But I remember then responding to that idiot. And at that point in time, especially, suddenly everybody backs down like, oh, that's not what I meant. I don't know. I didn't mean it that way. You're on here. Trolls are trolls, for the most part across time. You confront them and they fold pretty quickly. But, oh, I didn't mean to say that, but you said these exact words, like, what do you, so, yeah. So
it's the internet, man. You can't capture the tone.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Even then, yeah, you could copy and paste that from 20, 30 years ago and put it right here. But yeah, we got it to 50. Nothing about it reads like we knew it was happening, right? There's nothing.
Oh no! At the end of 50, it's like next issue, and there's like a little small little blurb. Yeah.
And 2 issues before that, or an issue before that, you got Holocaust or whatever, noticing big explosions, from across the city, and saying, "Oh, who's messing with my city?" So, he's gonna. It seems like I'm planting the seeds that he's gonna come in to some future story. We just set up the new armor. I mean, it feels like it's just a continuous set of adventures happening. There's no there. So was I really? So you got to imagine the whole sensibility was, no, we're doing this. Not that, we're trying to wrap this up, or that we suddenly got the news that you're done. Pull the threads. I mean, Terror Incorporated, the mercenary book, created and worked on, and like we got the news that thing is being pulled, right as I began writing 13 or something, or maybe 12. So that's why that has that rushed wrap up. And then there's the little kind of coda of a dance at the end of it, where I tried to give it like some kind of quote unquote emotional closure, but didn't really have any time to do it. I had to finish the demon story I was in the middle of and then say, all right, well, I guess we're never coming back to this book, but I really love it. So let me give it a little nice nod. But here it's just like, oh, next answer, or I'm sorry, next issue, the answer, or some whatever the heck it was. So,
so it was like after the fact, like everything was done for 50, and then they were just like, oh yeah, no, there's no more.
Well, I imagine timing wise, and I don't think we were many issues ahead. Again, this is all just intuitive, but neither do I think we were operating on the skin of our teeth, turning in pages and sending them right to the publisher. But so there would have been a little bit of working ahead. So we would have gotten the news in advance of 50 coming out, but it was sort of, writing, turning it in, talking it through, art coming in, scripting, whatever was going on was all just part of it. So the news would have come out, but not in a way that would have influenced where we were going to go next or what had come before. I think it was pretty sudden. It felt like it was Lilith, as you were saying, Milestone was going through a lot, overall. And, the
comic book industry in general, but specifically Milestone. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like it was just that hit, hey, it's done, hardware's canceled and, we're recalibrating or we're doing this. It's like, okay, well, that sucks for a lot of people and me and the character, but that happens.
And I do want to say, like, you came into an established team of colorists and pencilers and stuff, and you just fit right in. What was that? Do you remember what the collaborative parts of that was? Did you get a chance to talk to them or anything like that?
I
maybe Prentice.
Yeah, my brain has melted away. I don't recall whether or not we did a lot of that. I think the established team was certainly an advantage, as you said, to me, right? These people were this world. They had built large parts of this world. So I think I would have felt very much in safe hands in terms of, if I come up with something here, they're going to make sure it feels like it's the world, right? And call me on things probably if I do it wrong, as well. Like, he'd never do that, or that doesn't work. I mean, editorially, they're going to do that too. But I don't recall a lot of that. And that could be partly a bad memory, over times, or it could just be an also bad behavior. It
was just a smooth.
Yeah, it's just, I kind of pride myself on trying to be, and, being a collaborative, person and wanting to interface and interconnect with the artists and work together on things. I could also be hyper efficient and just sit down and let me write a bunch of stuff, let me get going and we'll catch up later, and instead not catching up as much as I would have wanted to on certain things. So I feel like I may not have really connected with the extended team along that way, but I feel like I was working very closely with the editorial team because they were, quote unquote, in control of this world a little bit more directly.
Again, as a new reader of it, it seemed like everyone was firing on all cylinders, and everything worked for me. The writing, the art, again, I said,
the transition was smooth.
Yeah.
Not even noticeable, honestly.
Yeah, I thank you. I credit that again to the Milestone world and the the effectiveness of the stories that came before, because reading through it, I think I clearly brought my own sense of style and intent of language and everything else to the book, and my love of 90s one-liners again. So I don't think there's a scene where it's not like, somebody doesn't pay off something with some quip or whatever. Just minor characters. Here's the mailman. Oh, he's got a clever line. But I think, when you read enough good stuff that's part of a world, you could absorb that. You do that like a bit of a sponge, and you get yourself into the zone. One of the best writer tricks, I think I read it early on, or I absorbed it early on, and it really helped me in marketing when I worked in that, and I had to write like really obscure things. Was, you take something that you want to be like and you just retype it. Do I want to write a horror story? So I'm just going to type, 10 pages of Stephen King, out, in marketing, I had to write stuff for IBM. I would take their established research papers or whatever, and I would type 5 pages of the research paper. And I think it gets you in the zone, right? It creates like this muscle memory of tonal approach and the rhythms of it. And I think you get the same thing from good reading of comics, knowing that you're going to enter into this world. Like, that's the way that they kind of interact, right? That's the rhythm. That's how he's plays things out. I'm patting myself on the back with these more than I think I ever have, just because I had such a fun read. You guys know I beat myself up on it. But even the scene with Icon, where he's like, in the library, and the characters are so different in certain ways. And I had never written that character before, but I felt like I was able to pick up on his tone and his rhythm pretty well, at least for me, and just reading it. And so you sort of you can smoothly integrate into that when you've got really good things to draw from. That, like, they were real characters, right? They had rhythms and history that I could pull from, it feels like, as opposed to, it's just generic Superman-ish guy or generic, metal guy or whatever it is.
No, I mean, it's funny you say that, because it reminded me in such a good way of like the Iron Man stuff of this era, where it's basically like a good. That stuff, it just reminds me of, a good Iron Man story is like, not only are you working on the characters, but it's like, okay, how can I add something new to the like technological side of it? So, yeah, how can I put my stamp on that? Because all the good writers of Iron Man, it's like, okay, here's the thing I added to his arsenal, because I think because he's been in the news recently, unfortunately, for not good Len Kaminsky.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Len's
throw
Iron
that
Man.
out
Yeah.
here. Yeah. If you guys are listening, Len Kaminsky, phenomenal writer, from that era, my era, a little bit longer, just one of the most blistering imaginations you could imagine. War Machine created, Morbius on the Midnight Suns, host of other things, bad health problems, and kind of getting screwed over at a care center. And so if you guys are listening, or you guys want to put this in the show notes, I'll send it to you afterwards. There's a GoFundMe to try to get him out from under this health debt that he's in. But he could really use some help. And it's unfortunate he's in that situation, but I think they're getting close to the goal to maybe get him out from under this thing. But he contributed, tremendous things to that character. And if you guys are big fans of listeners, if you're big fans of War Machine, the Hulkbuster armor, those type of things, like Len's the guy who introduced those to the Iron Man universe. Yeah.
So yeah, kids, definitely check the show notes. I'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah. And that was. I wish I could remember like more of the details of where these things came from, like the whole Edwin, construct,
the AI,
the AI, right? before AI was a thing and everywhere, right? And very ahead of the curve. But but it then becoming like an integral part of the hardware armor, toward the end, or that was the intent, that it was going to be integrated into his operating system. It does get integrated into his operating system. I don't know if editorial came up with that or I came up with that, but that feels like the sort of thing I would have at least had some influence on, because it was in that zone of stuff I was into.
You heard it here first, kids. Chichester created the armored character with AI in his armor.
Yeah, let's be very careful about couching that.
Yeah.
For a second, there was two of you, Lilith, and then there's like just one.
Ah!
Cloning yourself, like double the.
It's getting out of hand. Now there's two of them.
Talking about the AI.
I would just want to say I think issue 47 is my favorite of your run, and it's also in my top 10. Really
Why is that?
47. That's the. Well, I really enjoyed what you did with Static, and just yeah. And I loved all the little titles and like how you just like, it was a lot of atmosphere and a lot of like thinking puns, not like easy cheap puns. Those are the best kind of puns, the thinking puns.
They feel like they wrote themselves in a lot of ways, and I know I keep giving credit to the world and the books that came before, but I just feel probably in the stuff that they gave me and I read and prepped myself for this, you knew, quote unquote, how Static was going to, throw some shit or shade at and how the more authoritarian hardware was going to react to that, yet still have to keep a good, dynamic. Thank you. I appreciate that. In rereading it now, I said, wow, that's a lot of fun. I would like to have returned to those two guys, and played with that dynamic some more. And the ribbing and the sense that they were writing themselves in a way, like you say the quips and the barbs and stuff. At least it feels to me like the way it's positioned and written, you couldn't have just swapped it, right? They're both giving each other shit. But you couldn't have taken Hardware's line. Yeah. And like flopped it, where sometimes you can do that. You can read books or comics and just say, oh, that's a pretty good line, but that's a pretty good line, but it's pretty generic. If somebody was to cover up the characters, you wouldn't really know that's coming from this character, that's coming from that character. But here it feels like the tone and the beat and everything else. And not just because one has little scritchy outlines around their word balloons, which helps too.
No, because there's an age difference too, so it's like
Yeah. And Static has that Spider-Man, energy and humor and all that kind of tone. If anything, I mean, Milestone stuff is so original in a lot of ways, but you could also sort of put nods to, all right, we're drawing inspirations from this and this and this, which is fine. I mean, everybody does. But to me, that always had that early Spider-Man, feel in terms of the freewheeling tone of the character and the physicality of his motions.
But and you were talking about the rich universe. I mean, is that like a double-edged sword? Because it does make it so easy to write these characters, but on the other hand, you don't want to be, if something happens, you don't want to be the guy where they're just saying, "Oh, Chichester destroyed the Milestone universe,"
Right.
If something goes wrong,
you can't.
Sales,
no, that's a great point. Or you can't do that because Maple Street only runs 2 miles, in that direction, and then it turns, into Elm, and you can't. That's not the map. And God knows these guys probably actually did have a Dakota map, somewhere with
there
all that.
There actually is one somewhere on there.
Is there, like, with the specificity of that? But no, I never got any of that. I mean, I certainly didn't get. I never felt hampered by, a mental attitude of, oh, I can't do that because people are going to throw. Crap my way and say that you ruined this character. I feel, just from reading these again, that there's, that I was operating at as good a level as I probably was capable of at that time, even though I might not have been in the same kind of career catbird seat. It feels like everything was sort of really working in terms of, you're a person who knows how to write these really good adventure stories and juggle a lot of stuff and bring things forward. Again, I'm patting myself on the back. It must be the coffee this morning. But and so those skills seem very much in operation here in the way that it was like, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm good at. And I'm working with really good people. And so if I'm off, they're going to course correct me. Right. That's the best place you can be, working with a creative team in a comics environment, to me, is that sense of care and collaboration. I'm going to bring this idea to you with the best of intentions for the world, for the characters, not for myself, not to insert myself into the story or say, oh, Dan wrote this story. This is Dan's world. This is it. I'm bringing this in and I'm doing it with all the excitement I can. And then I'm trusting these professionals that I'm working with to say, no, that's not right. You know, the horror influence and the grisly influence and the kind of stuff that I was into, and God knows why you keep going back to the well of like, let's do another organ, stealing couple of people with the postmortem and the autopsy character. Yeah, exactly. Thank God help me. But in some ways that would have been, oh, let's do these type of villain characters. Let me pull those guys off the shelf. But I feel like, again, Lilith, like I said at the beginning, I feel like these ones actually work. Like Surgeon General never quite worked for me. They were, she was a half-baked character and we never came back to her. But these guys were pretty good. They had a vibe, they had a thing. And if they didn't work, I think the editorial team would have said, Joe would have, and probably did. He probably did something, and he probably said, why don't you do it this way, or cover this off, and and the fact they kind of come back a little bit later, the Tyrant character, brings them back around as his hench things or lapdogs or whatever you want to call them. Then feels like it's part. I love it. Gender neutral. Exactly, or hench things. It starts to feel like I was building a little bit more of a recurring world and maybe correcting for some of my past sins and mistakes, where I'd introduce maybe potentially interesting characters and then just keep moving on, and then not come back to them as much.
Well, isn't sometimes editorial too, though? Like, oh, maybe not that character again, Dan.
It could be.
Like
it could
people,
be.
Like.
Sure. I mean, that could be.
Some of the characters that you got introduced, you definitely wanted to come back to, but for whatever reason, we never got to. So sometimes let's focus on something else.
Yeah, I think I've said before, and I'll say it again. I feel for the most part, I was really fortunate with the editors I worked with, and got nothing. I was
trying not to blame you then. Oh.
No, blame me.
Story.
No, blame me. I will take the blame for most things like that. And I think that was, in the rush of the month-to-month books, you're telling certain stories, and maybe my mindset was, oh, I have to kind of keep coming up with something new versus being able to return to this and play this out more. And I don't know why I feel that way, because you can look at other creators, and sometimes they'll mull around with the same villain or character for a year plus, right? They keep doing that dynamic. And if I had to go back, maybe I would do that more, instead of here, introduce like this whole group of people, and then what do you do with it, right? You sort of, or I decimate them to such a point that they can't return. I look back at like,
always fun.
Yeah, but I look back at the snake root stuff from Daredevil. I introduced this whole hyper level of the Hand, these additional ninja-ish characters. And while I did come back to them in Elektra, it feels like they were pretty good characters. They felt like they had rich history. They did in my mind. But I sort of either didn't come back to them enough, or I let them, or I killed them, and then I was fired. So you couldn't really come back to them after that. But I take the blame for most of that, for not playing it out.
Blame DG.
No, you know,
He had, he had too many ideas. He kept wanting to add more characters. That's all.
Well, you do want to add characters, and you want to sort of build things up. I mean, here though, I felt, you know, coming back to hardware, because we go off on another character, you know, detour pretty easily. But I felt like here I was building stuff up. I was playing things out, and that, like, again, maybe because you're part of a very clearly defined world. You know, in a lot of ways, while it was expanding and becoming more expansive, the roots of it were still very visible. You know, you're 50 issues in on hardware, but it's less amorphous than however many years it was of the Marvel Universe at that point, which was like, yes, there's a history here. Yes, there's this, but it's so weird and so broad that it is what you make of it. So this may have felt like a little closer to the origin point for me. And that meant I wanted to kind of stay locked in and aligned to my building of it. That's intuitively how it seems to me. But it could just as easily have been Joe just giving me, like, you know, here, you're going to do exactly this. No, I don't feel that way at all. But you know.
Oh, I did want to mention this was the perfect time to be talking about hardware and just the Milestone universe in general, because this week, New Talent Showcase featuring the Milestone Initiative did come out. Where they did 12 stories. Yeah.
Oh man, I gotta go find
showcase, but it's the Milestone. Yeah, it's really good. It's 12 new writers. You know, and they all seem like they've read Milestone before, probably heavily influenced, and so it was really cool to read and see. So,
oh, I gotta go. Is that one big really collection, cool. Or is it like 12?
Yeah, it's 12 stories with 12 new writers.
Okay. In one volume? Is that what they did?
One volume, yeah.
Yeah, I gotta go get that. I kept seeing some of them, you know, doing some social where they were giving props to some of the people they'd worked with, you know, saying, hey, this is going to be my first story or whatever, and I worked with so-and-so as sort of a mentor on this. And so I've been looking forward to that. So I got to go check that out. What a great idea.
I can't believe they brought back New Talent Showcase. I was like, it's been so long. I used to collect those back in the day. So I was so excited to see that back. And then it was Milestone on top of it. I was like, yes.
Yeah, such a great initiative, literally. And such an exciting way to
I'm glad that they're remembering Milestone exists.
Well, I think they've gotten not as much as they should, but I think there's been more of a boost with the relaunch of certain things, and there was a couple of documentaries that sort of put the spotlight on them more in the last year and a half or so. So they deserve everything they can get out of this.
Well, it seems too. I mean, comics specifically, but like pop culture in general, it seems like people, like all these companies, are going to the 90s and just reboot stuff and do remakes and stuff. And
well, I think also in terms of Milestone, you know, specifically, and this is more as a fan and a reader, that there's an unrealized
for me.
There's an unrealized potential to that, right? When things got cut off at a certain point, both as a line, okay, and then we'll integrate this character in here, or we'll sort of use it here. And clearly Milestone had certain things that took off more, like the static animated show and things like that. As a world, right, it almost, to use a comics analogy, right, it almost got put in a bottle and preserved in this space where, all right, well, what happened to all that? You know, so now if it can become a shiny object and all of these stories that it was still on the cusp of telling could now be told in a bigger way, you know, more credit to them if they could make that happen. And maybe there's, I'm sure, you know, there's smart people involved with this, Dennis alone. But you know, there's got to be some PR and advantageous angle on this of, well, if you're tired of those types of superheroes, you know, here we've got superheroes of color, we've got different, you know, a whole different way of looking at it, right? If you're tired of that stuff, you know, and people are talking about, especially in the movies, right, superhero fatigue, more so because in my mind some of the things just aren't as well done as they might have been. But you could just play that angle, you know, and say, look, here's a whole different background, whole different set of characters with this. Of course, they're much more than that, but that could be the whatever, the tease, the angle that pulls people in. And that's all you need. If you've got good stuff behind it, then people are going to come to it for the angle. And then once they come to it for that, then they're going to appreciate all this stuff and all of that unrealized potential of that world, right? Which is just vibrating.
I'm excited, but I have a little bit of trepidation. But I'm excited because, like I said, the showcase was really good. And it's looking like they want to expand the world. They do have all those resources still that they still want to be true to that universe.
Yeah.
And there's still other people around, even though, Dwayne's gone. We still have the other people, and I hope that they can just live up to that. That's all.
Right. What are you trepidatious about? The sense that
the wokeness of it all. Like, I don't want them to do that angle because they tried that angle with the multiversity thing that they were doing for a while, and they got a lot of criticism. So, like, I don't know.
Everything becoming like a when you say the wokeness of it, and I hadn't seen that stuff. Like everything's got a page where
I don't want to feel
we stop the story, right? So we stop the story and we lecture to you or something like that. That sort of thing, right? Yeah.
It never felt like that to me with the Dakotaverse. So like,
that's there's a key thing, and
they were just realized characters in an urban environment that I could relate to a little bit better because, they use language that I use and things like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Where Spider-Man is relatable because he has girl troubles and school troubles, right? This is a little bit different with a hardware icon and a static for other people. So, yeah, I hope they can manage to walk that fine line.
I think it's really important. And looking at it now and reading it now, and I haven't fully articulated this, but here I'm a white guy writing a black character in a very and there are important things about the character and the world he's in that need to be continuously represented, which is part of what Dakota and Milestone was about. And I'm not going to say that I did it as well as somebody who lives that world, but I felt like the world gave me enough tools to be able to like not disrespect it and still be able to represent that is part of what this is. These stories and the reason this character is fueled by more aggression in the term of hardware and more calculation in the term of icon or whatever. It's going to sort of built in, right? It's built in, and if you tell the stories with that in mind, you can still get, excuse the air quotes again, agenda out there. And stories should have an agenda. Stories should have a point of view. Stories should be about something and not just like, let's run around and blow things up, for 20 pages. But when you make it a mandate to say something, then you've stepped outside the character, right? So I don't know if that's what you meant by the wokeness of it when you see those.
Yeah, like just some of the other trends around things. It's like, that was just never Dakotaverse. Like you just understood from the environment what they were in and the color of their skin and things that were going on and still going on. So it's just kind of like that whole amalgamation of the situation where what's understood doesn't need to be said out loud, I guess, kind of thing.
Right. I mean, and certain people who are either ignorant or outright racist are going to attack these type of books regardless, and like, call out.
Little Mermaid, they had to stop reading it because it was just
for Christ's sake. I mean, insane.
It's literally the same story, guys. She gave,
and it's a mermaid.
Yeah. That's
it's a mermaid.
That's like those same people who freak out. They're like, "Oh, black Santa Claus. No, Santa Claus is white," and it's like, really?
Right. But here, they're going to attack it anyway. But
it's like such a good universe, and they didn't. I mean, it was another thing for Milestone, but like they had people of all kinds for Milestone, and it just really meant a lot. And I just hope that they can keep like that level of it's they explicit and in your face, especially times like this right now where everything's a little bit of a dumpster fire, where everybody just jumps on a hate bandwagon. So
it's true. That's
how good things
totally
were.
True.
So
I mean, everything I've read about the thinking behind it seems like it's very true to to it, from an editorial, from we are creating something new based on, on Milestone. It feels like
and the Hardware and Icon book that they had out recently, it was pretty good too. So I mean, I don't want them to see dollars in their eyes and like dumb it down. That's all.
No, but then, I don't know if they walk around saying, "What would Dwayne do?" Probably not. But just the inherent power of the stories in the universe were kind of all baked into that early stuff, right? The early issues, the Bible and everything. And that's sort of the mother lode of everything. So if they're mining that, hopefully, they still got a lot to work with without having to dumb it down. And it should never have been. And I never read any of their stuff that felt like it was dumbed down. There was always something there. Somebody could comment on something or live something or express or demonstrate some part of their lived experience, and it could be part of the story, and it could get you thinking about that without it being let me lecture this, right?
What do they call it? After school special? Yeah.
Yeah. Although there were some very good after school specials. Let's be fair, but not
the 90s, not the 90s,
not the 90s. But they should have, they should be about something, right? Otherwise, any story should be about something. There should be some sense of and these have. When I say responsibility, that makes it sound like an agenda, but that to me feels like, something they have to live up to based upon where they came from, right? The fact of a publisher that was creating an entirely new universe based around an entirely, initially black, set of creators. And there's a mission to that without it being, an agenda that breaks your relationship with the reader. In fact, it invites the reader into something new, right? Here are some hooks that you're going to be really excited about because they're familiar to you, right? This character's sort of like quippy like Spider-Man. This character's sort of, techno like Iron Man. This character, he's your Superman, type of guy. Okay, I'll lean into it that way. And suddenly it's about something more, right? You just pulled a magic trick on me and now I can't escape from it. Because these are really exciting. These are really interesting. So that's sort of like the beautiful, it's a beautiful like combination of all those talents who came together and hopefully are still at work either directly or, this new crew is being infused with that same thing. Remains to be seen, but I have high hopes for it.
But I wanted to get both of your opinions on this because Lilith is such a super fan, and you did work on the books. Because I think they tried to do this around like the late 2000s. Should the Milestone characters be integrated into the larger DC universe, or should they stay in their own little bubble?
Some characters work in the larger universe while others don't. My fangirl be integrated into the DC universe. It's just a matter of like the team behind it. And their passion for it, I guess, is whether it'll work or not. But like Static, I thought totally could have, really should have, and they just kind of flubbed that one for whatever reason. So, and Midnighter and things like that,
yeah,
kind of work. I would have loved to see like a Red Hood crossover with them. Like the characters are so similar, but yet they would have like this kind of unique dynamic that they just kind of missed the boat on at the time. I don't think they really tried that hard to me from everything that I've researched and heard. So, but it can be done. But there's certain characters like Hardware, he could totally give a lot of these DC characters a run for their money.
Oh yeah,
and it would shake up the Justice League for sure if they ever wanted to.
Next, that's what because it seemed like in the late 2000s, like they were trying to like, was it Icon was showing up in like an issue or two of Justice League? It seemed like they were trying to do that, and then all of a sudden nothing came of it. I don't know if the New 52's to blame for that or what.
Well, it was probably legal reasons.
But doesn't DC have
going for a Milestone?
Yeah.
Like they were kind of like arguing back and forth at the time, I guess, when you read the articles. Allegedly, I guess we should say. But yeah. I think that's why it fell apart for so long and got put into a black hole. I'm just glad to see it come out of the black hole on the other side is all.
I haven't seen the places where they've, I'm aware of when they tried to integrate it. I haven't read any of those stories, but Lilith, the fact you use the words kind of and flubbed doesn't give me like a lot of excitement or faith in that kind of approach. I mean, you can make almost anything, quote unquote, work with a crowbar and a good set of spackle, to kind of smooth over the edges. But that kind of stuff to me feels more like a land grab of, well, we have the rights to do this, so why don't we just do it to make use of it? Otherwise, it's just sitting on the shelf. It's like the Watchmen stuff. Let's bring in, Dr. Manhattan. Let's bring in Icon. Let's bring in Hardware. And then, what you've got? Maybe you've got a team that is genuinely excited about using Hardware in the Justice League. Okay, maybe they see it. But Hardware is still less special to me then because he's now integrated with this wide, weird world, and he is now constrained, actually, not freed by being part of a bigger universe. He's constrained because he now has to operate or interoperate with all of these other weird rules.
Mother boxes and boom tubes.
Which really doesn't apply to him, right?
Yep.
And when you've got this fully formed thing over here, which has its, I'll say, agenda of being a type of books and representing certain things and telling certain adventures over here, and it's pretty fully realized, kids. It's not, like a
it really is.
Like a thin veneer. What do you get? You're just gaining. I mean, the Watchmen stuff to me was embarrassing in a way. I read a couple of issues of, Joker hanging out with Dr. Manhattan or something. I don't know what it was, but it's sort of like, what kind of convoluted lunacy is this? It's like when you're sort of interested in reading something and in my experience, it's like, oh, I haven't read this book in a while. And I go to Wikipedia to try to catch up. And it's a 90, screen long thing of, and then the Ghost Rider found out he was actually part of the universal spirit of the cosmic entity. But then, it's like, you lost me at that. You lost me at the first period. And
what's that double-edged sword though, right? Of then like them potentially not fully actuating the character and making him interesting and wanting to go check out the universe. Right.
Well, that's it, right? That's and applied more specifically to. I mean, the Watchmen stuff was just a land grab. We have these. We are going to use them. Whatever everybody else thinks, f you. To me, in a lot of ways, it's their right to do it. But why not do? If you're going to do it. Somehow build that world out more. If you guys watch the HBO Watchmen show, which at first I wasn't too keen on, but after a couple episodes, I felt like, man, this is sort of like feeling really like it's of the world, but in a different way. For me, at least, I really enjoyed it a lot.
Oh yeah.
But as opposed to drawing it into this other big pantheon of characters, I just feel Milestone. It's not precious, but you're kind of munging it up. It's either fan fiction. It's like, yeah, I'd really love to use Hardware in the Justice League. Or you're going to get creators who are like, I don't want to play with that character. I want to play with Green Lantern. Yeah. I don't, I'm going to, like you said, it's going to shift over really quickly to some new creative group. And that person is just going to shunt it off to the side and not treat it as if he has, the weight and potential that he has. So that's the right hands, I can easily be proven wrong, but I think in those instances you're probably going to have a lot more of the downside of that that combination than the upside on it.
Because the Hardware and Icon book is just kind of set in the Dakotaverse and not really anywhere else, and that's why it worked for me. The more recent one that they did. So.
Are they planning on doing integration with the DC stuff?
There.
Is that like the plan?
Here and there, but I don't. I think they just want to do the full on Dakotaverse, and I don't know if they think that it's like monetarily feasible, but like
Mm-hmm.
it is. Clearly
Mm-hmm.
it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you know, they have that whole new management and things, so we just kind of we've been kind of on tenterhooks at this point for a while.
Right.
So.
Right. I mean, you'll probably see, in my guess would be, you're probably going to see more of the combinations and integrations, because from a monetary point of view, somebody at DC or somebody at Warner's is just going to say, you know, well, yeah, that looks really great. Those guys do really great work. But if they were with whatever, you know, Flash, you know, Flash can do it, right? There's a multiverse. He can run right into the Dakota universe and then like back again. And then that's our bridge. Let's do that.
He put the salt in the wound, didn't he?
You know, we're not going to call it Flashpoint. We're going to call it Dakota Point. And then,
don't manifest that.
Flashpoint Dakota City.
Exactly. Like subtitle, right?
Yes.
And
Dawn of the Dakotaverse, great guys.
But again, you're just sort of like, all right, well then you're sort of also, I think you're getting more attention, right? There's a hook. People, and people will. Right? I would never look at Milestone books, but I'll look at a Flash book, and now Flash is in this book. Well, maybe this is worth my time. That will happen, right? That's great. But you are also, to my mind, disintegrating the specialness of this other book and characters, because you're saying they don't matter unless the Flash is there. They don't matter unless Superman's there. They don't matter unless Batman visits Dakota City or something like that. That's what you're saying.
That reminds me of the Naomi conundrum, right?
What's that?
Like, she lives in a Naomi, by Peter David and Michael Bendis, and it's like, you know, she's kind of like, she lives in like a flyover state, and it's kind of like very vague, and then like she gets integrated, and it's just like, I kind of wanted to explore her world more before she got integrated into the DC universe. It's just like, oh man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's that fine balance.
Right.
Like, it's such a big business now, and it's so not personal anymore. You know.
Well, that's it. And somebody's going to say, "Well, we have these characters. What can we get out of them? How do we mine them as quickly as possible?" And
the only thing that would be good for me is the toys. Like, I would love a Hardware and Icon play set.
Yeah,
preferably a McFarlane set.
I was going to say, get McFarlane on it, right away, and get one of those like hyper detailed.
That would be the only upside, but like story wise for me, I don't think it would be an upside. But I would love merch, and I think that's the only way we'll get merch, unfortunately.
I mean, you've talked about it before, Dan. I mean, I think even more modern, they feel this more and more, because it used to be you could write a well told story, a thoughtful story. But now it seems like more and more, I know it was back then, but even more now, it's like, well, what kind of big event can you give us? Or, what
where's
can
the
you...
crossover,
guys?
Right. Well, that's it. That's the bigger entity. If Milestone was part of a smaller publisher, then it would have the problems of being part of a smaller publisher, but it could stand on its own more, in a way. But because it's part of this big entity, and whatever the deals and not deals were, it seems to me DC and Warner's has enough hooks into Milestone that they're not going off on their own, right? So somebody is saying, well, how do we take advantage of these characters? How do we do it? If you got some smart energy behind it, you're going to do some really committed standalone prestige HBO Watchmen-like, type of approach. If you've got, the quick hit approach, it's like, just do the multiverse thing and cross over with it. Everybody gets that now, Throw a magic bagel in there, and and then
the Spider-Verse.
I said everything, ever, all at once too, which is amazing. But anyway, I think the best thing you can do as fans is obviously pick the stuff up and read it, and then talk the hell out of it to people who are not convinced, and get it into their hands. If it's good stuff, people will respond to it.
I agree.
Yeah. All right. Anything else, Lilith?
No.
All right. So
I want to pat DG on the back just one more time.
No, yeah.
Really, honestly, it was so good, and I love that you weren't beating yourself up about it, because it was really good. Like I said, it was like
Thank
a
you.
smooth transition.
And again,
I was literally reading it with my dad at the time.
And again, it's like
Milestone means a lot to me. So yeah,
it
Thank
works.
you, Lilith.
See,
That means a lot.
that's
really,
why that's why it works so well. Longtime fan, she loves it. I mean, I come to it newer. I loved it, so it works for everybody. So yeah,
and it worked for me. I wrote it, but to me it's like, oh wow, it's like, no, thank you for this one. This one was a really good trip, on all levels. I just wish I could remember more about the specifics, but whatever the specifics were, the stories turned out really good. So I'm happy with that. I'm gonna go send Joe a note, and maybe
I was gonna say, if you could go back to the world, if they invited you, would you go back? Do you have like the time to go back? Maybe.
Oh, I would love to go back.
That.
I would manifest that before I'd manifest, Dakota Point. Yeah. I mean, these are great characters. It's a great world. I mean, I think they have many terrific creators working on this. So those are the folks they should and are focusing on. But if there was never an opportunity to go play with this world again, I would embrace that. They're
Is there another
great
character
stuff.
you want to do, or would you want to go back to Hardware or like a team book, or?
I would just, as I did with all those other entry points, the Blood Syndicate, issues, the Long Hot Summer, which was a dedicated thing. These issues, I would just, I would probably just want to invest myself in the learning of what's going on with it, and then choose from there. But nothing says to me, oh, I have an unrealized Hardware story to tell. Whatever was happening in that next issue, I don't know. I could tell you sort of what was happening in the next issues of Daredevil, but I couldn't tell you what was happening here. But I feel like it would be fun to play with this character and modern technology and all the things that I'm still interested in. Would be.
He gets a pet drone. Yay!
He gets a pet drone. Exactly. That would be my next big contribution, right?
Any book, as long as they let him write villains, these bloody hackers.
Yeah, exactly.
Hack
And I've got
villains.
this idea for modern surgery. He's a robot surgeon now. Oh, now we're doubling down. All right, this is a good time to end the show.
Oh, there's the promo, DC. The return of comics legend D.G. Chichester to comics.
Bring it back around.
The fans demand it. All right, so yes, thank you, sir, so much. All right, next time I was thinking in honor, because Secret Invasion, that show's coming soon here with Sam Jackson. Maybe we'll jump back into the Nick Fury stuff. Let's do Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. 20 through 23.
All right. I'm writing that down now and do my homework again. All right, guys. Listen, thank you again. Folks who are listening still. It's been a longer episode.
The newsletter, and you got. I know you have you have a new project coming up. Promote it.
Yep. Read the newsletter, storymaze.substack.com. Started to tease out this new project there. Next episode of this, we will definitely have more detail on that. I can talk it up, at least show you guys some stuff. A lot of stuff is coming together on that front. And then if you're in the Connecticut northeastern area, I think I'm ahead of this a little time. We can talk, but anyway, I'll be at Mohegan Suns for Terrificon at the end of July. We can talk that up probably next episode before it happens. But just as a kind of a thinking there, I'll be there Saturday and Sunday. So folks want to come by and say hi, that would be fun.
Oh yeah, just like 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Terrificon again? We're back. It's been that long.
Been that long.
Yeah, a few weeks ago, I was talking to Ann Nocenti, and she was telling me what a fun time you guys had.
Yeah, Richmond.
Yeah.
It was such a great time. Great seeing her. Great seeing John Romita Jr. We were sort of like all like in an L shape. She was right across from me. John was just up there. So it was like this little mini Daredevil reunion. And did she tell you about the Charlie Cox?
Vincent D'Onofrio. Yeah.
That was fun. And we're all like standing there like, he doesn't even know who the hell we are. But he was so nice. Such a great guy. It was a lot of fun just talking that and listening to them. We could have a whole discussion around that. So we'll pick that up next time.
Okay. All right. So yes, thank you, sir, once again for your time. We enjoy this every time, and
thank you, guys. Yes, it's a lot of fun. This is a great world to go back to. I really appreciate the invitation and the opportunity. You guys stay well.
I do. Thank you, sir.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.